During the Last Supper, Jesus gave us his new commandment: love one another as I have loved you. It was so important that he repeated it more than once during that sacred meal. We all know about that commandment, and we all know that it touches the core of our identity and our mission as followers of Jesus Christ. But Jesus also said something else during the Last Supper, on the eve of his passion, death, and resurrection. He told his apostles, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." And this admonition, which in a certain sense also sounds almost like a commandment, was also so important that he repeated it during that sacred meal. And the second time he mentions it, he turns his attention to what should be in our hearts instead of trouble: peace. "Peace I leave you," he explains. "My peace I give you. Not as the world gives do I give it. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid." Doesn't it strike you as strange that Jesus would admonish us, indeed almost command us, not to let our hearts be troubled? He doesn't say, "Don't worry if your hearts get troubled." He doesn't say, "Having a troubled heart sometimes is unavoidable, so don't sweat it." No, he actually says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." He knows that we live in a fallen world, and we're constantly struggling with confusion and disillusionment, with rejection and sadness, discouragement, and all of these things, they trouble our hearts. And yet he still says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." If he says this, it must be possible. But how? That's what this retreat guide will explore. In the first meditation, we'll look at what St. Paul thinks about this teaching of Jesus. In the second meditation, we'll watch and learn from Jesus himself as he calms his own troubled heart in the Garden of Gethsemane. And then in the conference, we'll take a brief look at some of the reasons why it's so hard for us to follow this instruction of our Lord. Before we get started, take a few moments to thank God for this chance to spend some time with him, and ask him for the grace that you need to grow spiritually, to, as the 13th century saint Richard of Chichester put it, to know the Lord a little bit more clearly, to love him more dearly, and to follow him more nearly.